The first time Emma saw her, it was as if the world had paused. This horse wasn't sleek or graceful, her coat mottled with scars that told stories of past neglect, her mane tangled and dusty, her eyes wary, suspicious, glimmering with an almost human intelligence that dared anyone to come too close. The elite stable had rejected her outright, calling her untrainable and ugly, and yet, standing alone in the early morning light, ears flicking nervously, Emma felt a strange pull, an unspoken challenge she couldn't ignore. She stepped closer, heart pounding, feeling the chill of the damp hay under her boots, and whispered softly, "It's okay, you're safe now." The horse flinched, tossing her head, nostrils flaring as if to say, "I don't trust anyone." Emma's hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of responsibility she felt, a pull she hadn't expected in months, ever since leaving her city job and returning to her family's old ranch after her father passed. She remembered the last time she felt this kind of connection. It was with her first horse, Lark, who had died too soon, leaving behind a hole in her chest she thought could never be filled. But now, facing this wild, mistrusting creature, Emma's instincts told her this wasn't just another animal needing care. This was a soul reaching out, daring her to bridge a gap she had thought impossible. She took a deep breath, letting her scent and her presence calm her nerves, and offered her hand. The horse shifted back, muscles coiled, hooves scraping the ground, yet she didn't bolt. Something unspoken passed between them, a tiny flicker of recognition, as if the horse could sense Emma's own brokenness, her longing to connect, her desire to heal, and in that instant, the dusty corral seemed to fade away. Emma decided she would name her Storm, not because she was wild and untamed, but because even storms could be beautiful when they passed, leaving the world changed, alive, renewed. That day, the stable owner's words rang hollow in her mind, their judgment meaningless compared to the raw, undeniable presence of Storm's gaze, and Emma made a promise to herself. She would show this horse what love and trust could do. Over the next few hours, she attempted simple gestures, offering oats, speaking softly, walking slowly around the pen, letting Storm set the pace, not the other way around. There were moments of tense standoffs, hearts racing, breaths shallow, where Emma thought she might fail, where the horse stomped, pinned ears, and turned away, yet Emma returned every time, her patience tested, her resolve deepening. She found herself talking to Storm about her own struggles, as silly as it sounded, recounting her father's last days, the heartbreak of losing the ranch to debts, the loneliness of returning to a place that felt half empty, half haunted by memories. Each time she spoke, she noticed Storm's ears twitch, a soft nicker, the slightest lean toward her, and a tiny spark of hope ignited inside Emma. By sunset, after hours of careful observation, she managed to approach closer than ever before, gently stroking the horse's neck where a deep scar ran, feeling the tremble of tense muscles beneath her palm. And in that trembling, Emma felt the first thread of trust weaving between them, fragile, almost imperceptible, yet undeniable. She whispered, "We're going to do this together." And Storm, after a long pause, lowered her head slightly, nostrils flaring in a cautious, tentative acceptance. Emma knew the road ahead would be long, weeks of training, days of frustration, moments of doubt, but something in her chest told her this was the kind of challenge worth every heartbreak, every setback. As the sky deepened into twilight, casting golden shadows across the barn, she pulled out her phone and captured a photo, a subtle encouragement to her followers. Even the overlooked, the unloved, the rejected can shine if someone believes in them. Little did Emma know, that first hesitant touch would set off a chain of events that would turn the elite stable's judgment into their biggest regret, and within 5 months, the very people who had dismissed Storm would be on their knees, begging for a chance they had once cruelly denied. But for now, in the quiet of the corral, it was just Emma and Storm, two souls meeting in mutual wariness, each silently promising to respect the other's pace, each unsure, each daring the other to take the first step. And as Emma watched Storm graze the last golden rays of sunlight, a shiver ran down her spine, a mixture of awe and anticipation, because she sensed, with every fiber of her being, that this horse was destined to change her life forever, just as much as she was about to change Storm's, in ways neither of them could yet imagine. The wind rustled the hay, carrying the faint smell of rain, and Emma whispered again, softly, as if to make a secret pact, "We're going to be unstoppable." And in that moment, even though Storm's eyes were wary, they shimmered with something Emma hadn't expected, possibility. The next morning, Emma returned to the corral with a mix of excitement and apprehension, knowing that yesterday's fragile connection could vanish in an instant if she misstepped. Storm was already there, ears flicking, nostrils quivering, her eyes alert, wary, almost daring Emma to test her patience. Emma approached slowly, speaking in a soft, melodic tone, recounting little stories of her day, sharing thoughts aloud as if to create a bridge between human and horse, and she noticed, almost imperceptibly, that Storm's stance softened, the tension in her shoulders easing ever so slightly. Hours passed as Emma moved around the pen, tossing a few oats, letting Storm investigate at her own pace, watching as the horse pawed the ground, flicked her tail, and finally let her nose brush Emma's hand, an electrifying moment of trust, tiny yet monumental, that made her heart leap. But just when Emma allowed herself a small smile, a loud crack of a falling branch from the nearby pine trees startled Storm, and she bolted, hooves striking the earth with a thundering sound that made Emma's stomach clench. She ran after her, heart hammering, shouting encouragements, dodging the sudden spring rains that soaked her jacket, and the way Storm twisted and darted through the field reminded Emma of every fear she had carried for months, the fear of losing someone, the fear of failing, the fear that despite her best intentions, she couldn't heal what was broken. After several frantic minutes, Storm stopped at the edge of the creek, trembling, nostrils flaring, her coat gleaming with wet streaks of mud and rain, and Emma knelt on the grass, keeping her voice low, even as her hands shook from adrenaline. "It's okay, it's just me," she whispered, letting the rain hit her face, soaking her hair, feeling the raw pulse of life around them. Slowly, cautiously, Storm stepped forward, and Emma reached out, letting the horse nuzzle her palm, sensing her need for reassurance. The bond was fragile, yes, but it was real, alive, and Emma felt it deepen, threading through her heart with warmth and awe. Over the next few days, Emma devised a plan. She would earn Storm's trust in small, consistent ways, never forcing, never pushing, only offering patience, kindness, and respect. She led her around the paddock, letting her explore, encouraging curiosity, celebrating small victories when Storm allowed her to groom her mane, or when she followed Emma willingly instead of bolting. Each success was a spark of triumph, a reason to keep going, and Emma often caught herself laughing aloud when Storm did something unexpectedly playful, tossing her head, nudging a bucket, or letting out a soft nicker that seemed almost like laughter. But trust, Emma realized, was not linear. It came in bursts, followed by retreats, moments of rebellion, and nights when she worried if Storm's fear of humans would ever truly fade. Emma herself wrestled with impatience, frustration, and self-doubt, remembering the stinging words of the elite stable, the way they had dismissed Storm as a lost cause, and feeling a surge of determination to prove them wrong, not for pride, but for Storm, for herself, for the possibility that love and persistence could defy expectation. One afternoon, as Emma led Storm along a narrow trail through the woods, a sudden rustle in the underbrush made the horse rear, shaking, eyes wide, muscles taut as bowstrings, and Emma froze, feeling that familiar rush of fear, yet she held her ground, speaking in calm, measured tones, letting Storm feel the steadiness of her presence. It took several minutes of slow steps, deep breaths, and whispered encouragements, but Storm eventually relaxed enough to follow, her ears flicking, nostrils quivering, and for a brief moment, Emma glimpsed the quiet intelligence behind those wary eyes. The horse was learning, watching, deciding that maybe, just maybe, this human could be trusted. In the evenings, as the sky blushed with pink and gold, Emma sat by the fence, watching Storm graze, thinking about the bond growing between them, the silent conversations carried out in eye contact, in the tilt of a head, in the faint nicker that passed between them. She began documenting their progress, taking short videos, snippets for her small audience, encouraging them to like and share as a subtle reminder that even the overlooked could become remarkable with patience and heart. But the real test came when Emma tried to saddle Storm for the first time. The horse tensed immediately, stamping her hooves, ears pinned, eyes wide with alarm, and Emma's heart clenched, sensing the magnitude of the challenge ahead. She let the saddle rest against the fence for a while, speaking softly, offering treats, gently stroking her sides, gradually letting Storm acclimate to its presence. Hours turned into days of incremental progress, touching, nudging, letting Storm investigate, step back, step forward, every small movement a victory, every retreat a lesson in patience. And slowly, imperceptibly at first, Storm allowed the saddle closer, then finally let Emma lift it onto her back without panic, her eyes softening, muscles relaxing, and Emma felt a surge of pride, awe, and emotional release, the first real breakthrough in their journey together. That night, as she brushed the wet mud from Storm's flanks and whispered reassurances, Emma thought of the elite stable, their sneers, their dismissive words, and a quiet satisfaction bubbled in her chest, not out of vengeance, but out of wonder at how wrong they had been, at how the horse they had rejected was teaching Emma about resilience, trust, and the quiet, profound magic of connection. And as Emma left the barn that night, rain dripping from her jacket, hair plastered to her forehead, she glanced back to see Storm watching her from the stall, ears pricked, eyes bright, and for a heartbeat, it felt like a silent promise. They would face whatever came next together, unshaken, unstoppable, a bond forged through fear, patience, and unwavering courage, preparing them both for challenges and triumphs neither could have imagined. And the story that had just begun would soon become one that would make the world, and that very elite stable, sit up and take notice. By the third month, Emma and Storm had formed a rhythm, a quiet understanding that went beyond commands or routines. It was a bond forged in patience, mutual respect, and the countless small victories of trust. Storm had begun to respond to Emma's subtle cues, lowering her head when Emma approached, nudging her shoulder gently when she wanted attention, even following her without hesitation along the familiar trails of the ranch. But the real challenge arrived unexpectedly one crisp morning when Emma decided it was time to take Storm beyond the safe confines of the corral and open paddocks. She wanted to test Storm's courage in a wider, unpredictable environment, to see if the progress they had made would hold under pressure. As they stepped onto the rough terrain of the far field, a distant herd of wild horses appeared across the valley, their thundering hooves echoing like a warning. Storm froze, muscles taut, eyes wide, and Emma felt the familiar pulse of tension in her own chest. "It's okay," she whispered, inching forward slowly, letting Storm see that she was calm, grounded, and ready to guide her. But the wild horses sensed them, and a young stallion broke from the group, prancing, snorting, asserting dominance, and Storm bolted instinctively, hooves striking the dirt with raw power that made Emma's stomach lurch. Emma sprinted after her, heart hammering, arms outstretched, voice breaking into urgent, melodic calls, as if she could draw the horse back with nothing but the sound of her words. Storm swerved around rocks, over roots, ears pinned, adrenaline coursing through her veins, yet something remarkable happened. When Emma caught up, she didn't panic. Instead, she felt the tug of trust that had been building for months, guiding her steps. Emma slowed, matching Storm's pace, letting her know she wouldn't force her, wouldn't chase her into fear. After several tense minutes, Storm skidded to a stop at the edge of a small creek, water rushing over mossy stones, nostrils flaring, chest heaving, yet she didn't bolt again. Emma approached carefully, speaking softly, her hands shaking but steady, brushing damp strands of mud from Storm's flank, feeling the tremor of adrenaline leave her horse's muscles. And in that moment, Emma realized something profound. Storm had learned that courage didn't mean absence of fear, it meant choosing to trust, to follow, to stay, even when the world around her seemed dangerous. Over the next few weeks, Emma built on this breakthrough. She introduced new obstacles, narrow bridges over streams, uneven slopes, unfamiliar paths lined with snapping branches, each test designed not to dominate Storm, but to let her learn, to let her make choices, to strengthen the bond of mutual respect. Storm reacted unpredictably at first, stamping, tossing her head, spinning away. But with each gentle correction, each patient reassurance, she began to navigate the world with increasing confidence. Emma documented the progress, capturing moments of triumph, Storm daringly stepping onto a rocky path, ears forward, nostrils quivering with excitement, a soft nicker of encouragement when Emma coaxed her across a slippery log, the subtle tilt of her head, a silent acknowledgement of trust. Emma's followers on her social media channels responded with awe and encouragement, but she barely noticed the growing numbers. What mattered was the quiet, almost sacred rhythm she shared with Storm. Yet, as with any journey of transformation, challenges weren't only physical, they were deeply emotional. One evening, after a long day of trail work, Emma sat in the corral watching Storm graze, and memories of her father's last days returned sharply, the hospital room filled with the smell of antiseptic, the helplessness she had felt, the fear of losing someone she loved and couldn't save. Tears pricked her eyes, and for a moment, she felt the weight of grief and responsibility, of wondering if she was enough, not just for the ranch, but for Storm. Then, almost instinctively, Storm came closer, her warm breath against Emma's hand, nudging her shoulder, as if sensing the need for comfort. Emma laughed through her tears, stroked Storm's mane, and realized that the trust and bond they had built was healing in ways she hadn't anticipated. It was a mirror reflecting her own courage, resilience, and capacity to care. The real turning point came during a local riding demonstration Emma decided to enter, partly to test Storm's confidence and partly to prove, to herself and to the world, that her rejected horse was extraordinary. The elite stable had scoffed at her emails, dismissed her progress reports, even mocked the idea that a scarred, uneven-coated horse could ever perform with skill and poise. But now, standing at the edge of the arena, Emma felt something stronger than defiance. It was awe, wonder, and a deep surge of pride. Storm pawed at the ground, ears alert, eyes scanning the environment, yet she stayed close to Emma, chest heaving, waiting for a signal. The crowd murmured at first, some whispering about the horse's unconventional appearance, but as Emma led Storm through the exercises, careful turns, precise gait, gentle jumps, the murmurs turned into gasps of amazement. Emma's heart raced as she watched Storm respond perfectly to each cue, her movements graceful in a raw, untamed way, her spirit shining through every stride. And then came the final obstacle, a small, seemingly innocuous jump, but one that could test Storm's confidence fully. Emma whispered, "We can do this," feeling the tension in her own chest mirror her horse's. Storm reared slightly, ears pinned, nostrils flaring, and for a heartbeat, Emma feared a retreat. But then, with a sudden surge of controlled energy, Storm leapt, hooves landing softly on the other side, eyes bright, ears forward, mane flowing, and the crowd erupted. Tears streamed down Emma's face as she hugged Storm, feeling the culmination of months of patience, trust, and emotional investment. It wasn't just a victory in the arena, it was a declaration to the world that love, persistence, and belief in the overlooked could create something extraordinary. And as she led Storm out, wiping mud from her legs, she caught a glimpse of the elite stable owner standing at the edge of the crowd, eyes wide, jaw tight, recognition dawning too late. They had dismissed Storm, but Emma had unveiled the true power and heart of the horse they had deemed untrainable. Little did Emma know, this demonstration was only the beginning of a chain of events that would force the elite stable to reckon with their mistake, and over the coming weeks, the world would witness a horse once rejected rise into a story of wonder, awe, and inspiration, all because one woman had chosen to trust, to persist, and to see beauty where others only saw flaws. The weeks after the demonstration were a whirlwind of emotions, challenges, and unexpected recognition. Emma and Storm had become a quiet sensation online, followers drawn not just to the horse's remarkable transformation, but to the authentic bond they shared, a connection that seemed to pulse through every clip, every photo, every story Emma told. Yet behind the growing admiration was the lingering shadow of doubt. Storm's past was a constant reminder that trust could be fragile, that one startling noise, one unfamiliar face, could send her racing into fear, unraveling months of careful progress. One afternoon, as Emma led Storm along the old river trail that cut through dense woods, the tranquility shattered with a sudden roar of an engine, an off-road vehicle tearing through the path, throwing rocks and debris in all directions. Storm reared, nostrils flaring, hooves skidding on the muddy earth, panic threatening to overtake her. Emma's heart leapt into her throat as she shouted reassurances, running alongside her, voice strong and steady, arms extended, trying to anchor her horse through the chaos. It was a test unlike any other. They were alone, vulnerable, and yet Storm didn't bolt entirely. She circled back, brushing close to Emma, seeking the security she had come to trust. That moment crystallized Emma's realization that their bond was more than training. It was survival, mutual understanding, and an unspoken promise to protect each other. They navigated the riverbank carefully, each step deliberate, each whisper of encouragement a lifeline. By the time they returned to the safety of the ranch, soaked and exhausted, Emma was trembling, adrenaline still coursing, yet her heart swelled with pride at Storm's courage. "You did it," she murmured, stroking her damp neck, feeling the strength and intelligence of this horse who had once been called ugly and unworthy. It wasn't long after that the elite stable reached out, not with support or congratulations, but with curiosity veiled as professional inquiry. They had heard whispers of Storm's performance, seen snippets online, and were reportedly interested in seeing the horse in person. Emma felt a complicated rush of emotions: satisfaction, skepticism, and the faint twinge of vindication. She agreed to let them visit, but on her terms, Storm's comfort and safety above all else. The day of their arrival, the tension was palpable. Storm sensed the unfamiliar people immediately, ears flicking, muscles coiled. Emma kept her calm, speaking gently, positioning herself between Storm and the intruders, and together, they walked toward the small demonstration area. The elite stable professionals approached, notebooks in hand, eyes scanning every scar, every uneven stride, every hesitant movement. And yet, as Storm performed the familiar maneuvers, fluid, precise, with a quiet grace that came not from forced training but from mutual trust, their skepticism melted into awe. Gasps and whispered comments rippled through the group as they watched the horse they had once dismissed leap, pivot, and respond with a combination of raw power and undeniable intelligence. Emma's chest tightened. She felt vindication but also a strange tenderness for the very people who had underestimated Storm. Their astonishment was palpable, their previous judgment now painfully transparent, and Emma realized in that moment that the story wasn't just about proving someone wrong, it was about showing the world the incredible potential that lies hidden when patience, love, and belief are applied to those deemed unworthy. Storm, for her part, seemed to understand the stakes. Her head was high, nostrils flaring, eyes bright, yet she remained tethered to Emma's calm presence, trusting her guidance above all else. As the elite stable asked question after question, about her training, her diet, her temperament, Emma answered with quiet confidence, letting Storm's actions speak louder than any words could. The culmination of this encounter came when Emma offered to allow Storm to demonstrate a more complex series of maneuvers, something she had perfected over weeks in private, building trust and fluidity that few had witnessed. Storm moved through the patterns flawlessly, ears pricked, meneh flowing, every step a testament to resilience, patience, and unbreakable connection. By the end, even the most dismissive of the stable professionals were visibly shaken, some whispering among themselves, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Emma felt a quiet swell of satisfaction, a deep, resonant pride, not in proving her critics wrong, but in honoring the journey she and Storm had undertaken together. And then came the unexpected twist. One of the professionals, a woman Emma had not noticed before, approached with a hesitant smile, her voice soft. "We were wrong," she admitted, almost as if confessing a personal failing. "We never imagined a horse like Storm could." Her words trailed off, but the meaning was clear. Emma smiled, feeling neither triumph nor gloating satisfaction, just a quiet joy in seeing recognition and respect where doubt had once stood. Storm nuzzled her shoulder, sensing the relief, the pride, the human emotion she had learned to respond to. That day marked a turning point, not just for the horse and Emma, but for everyone who witnessed it. The power of persistence, love, and belief had transformed an ugly, rejected horse into a creature capable of awe and inspiration. As the sun dipped behind the trees, painting the paddock in gold and amber, Emma captured a few photos for her followers, a subtle encouragement to like, share, and believe in the impossible. Storm grazed nearby, serene, confident, her eyes glimmering with understanding, and Emma whispered, "This is just the beginning." Little did anyone realize, the story of Storm was far from over. There were new challenges ahead, deeper bonds to form, and moments of vulnerability that would test both Emma and her horse in ways neither could yet imagine, making the eventual resolution all the more heartwarming and unforgettable. The morning of the final test arrived with a sense of electricity in the air, a subtle tension that seemed to wrap around the paddock like a living thing. Emma felt it in her chest, in the flutter of her hands as she adjusted Storm's bridle, and in the way Storm shifted her weight, ears pricked, eyes bright with anticipation. This was not just another demonstration, it was the culmination of months of patience, resilience, and the quiet, painstaking work of building trust from the ground up. The elite stable had returned, whispers of disbelief following them like shadows, and Emma could see the mix of curiosity, doubt, and awe etched on every face. She breathed deeply, looking down at Storm, brushing the damp strands of hair from her eyes, and whispered, "We've come so far. Let's show them who you really are." Storm's response was immediate, a soft nicker, a step closer, the slightest tilt of her head as if saying, "I trust you." The crowd fell silent as Emma guided Storm through a series of maneuvers she had never revealed to anyone outside the ranch, intricate patterns that tested balance, precision, and communication executed flawlessly. Each jump, each pivot, each graceful turn was a testament not to training alone, but to the invisible thread connecting them, woven from months of mutual understanding, vulnerability, and unwavering commitment. At one point, Storm faltered slightly on a narrow bridge, muscles tensing, eyes wide, but Emma stayed calm, laid her hand gently on her flank, whispered encouragement, and in that split second of reassurance, Storm moved forward, conquering fear with courage born of trust. The crowd erupted in applause as Storm completed the final jump, ears forward, nostrils flaring, menere flowing like a banner of triumph. Emma's eyes welled with tears, not for validation, but for the journey they had shared, the rejections, the setbacks, the nights of doubt, and the slow, miraculous growth of trust between human and horse. The elite stable professionals, some visibly shaken, could not deny what they had witnessed. The horse they had once dismissed as ugly and untrainable had transformed into a creature of awe, beauty, and undeniable skill. One of the women, the same who had approached Emma weeks earlier with hesitant admiration, stepped forward, voice trembling. We underestimated her," she admitted, glancing at her colleagues. "We were wrong." Emma smiled softly, stroking Storm's neck, feeling a quiet pride that was neither boastful nor vindictive. It was simply the joy of witnessing potential realized. Storm nudged her shoulder, a subtle reminder that this was their victory together, a shared moment of triumph and understanding. In the weeks that followed, Emma's story of Storm spread far beyond the local community. She shared videos, photos, and reflections with her followers, encouraging them to like, subscribe, and share, not for fame, but to show that even the overlooked, the abandoned, the rejected can achieve greatness when met with patience, love, and belief. Storm became more than a horse. She became a symbol of resilience, a living testament to the power of trust, and a reminder that appearances and first impressions can never capture the full measure of potential within a soul. Emma, too, felt transformed. The grief she carried, the loneliness, the self-doubt, had been softened by the bond she had nurtured, and she realized that in saving Storm from rejection, she had also saved a part of herself she hadn't known was at risk. One quiet evening, as they watched the sun sink behind the hills, casting long golden shadows over the ranch, Emma leaned against Storm's shoulder, feeling the warmth, the steady pulse of life beneath her hand, and whispered, "We've done it. We really did it." Storm's ears twitched, a soft nicker escaping her lips, and in that simple sound, Emma heard affirmation, understanding, and a shared pride that transcended words. The elite stable, once dismissive and condescending, reached out again, this time with respect, seeking opportunities to learn from Emma's approach, and though she could have felt vindicated, she simply smiled, knowing the real reward had always been the journey, the bond, and the quiet magic of seeing potential shine where others saw only flaws. And as Emma captured one last photo for her followers, Storm standing proudly in the golden light, eyes bright, menere flowing, a living embodiment of perseverance, she felt the swell of emotion that comes from knowing you've witnessed a transformation that touches the heart, that inspires awe, and that leaves a lasting imprint. "Never give up," she whispered to her audience in the caption that accompanied the post. "On those who are overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed, you never know the greatness they carry inside." And as Storm nuzzled her gently, Emma smiled through tears, knowing the story they had written together, of rejection, trust, courage, and triumph, was one that would linger long after the applause faded, a testament to the extraordinary bond between a human and a horse, and the miracles that can happen when patience, belief, and love are given freely, unconditionally, and without fear.